History is full of strange and shocking moments, moments you wouldn't believe if they weren't true. Did you know Alexander the Great may have been buried alive, fully conscious, or that a baboon once held a railway job without ever making a mistake? These are just two of the jaw-dropping facts we're diving into today. From bizarre deaths to mind-blowing mysteries, here are 20 historical facts that will keep you hooked until the very end. Alexander the Great, one of history's most legendary conquerors, met a mysterious and untimely death in 323 BCE at the age of 32. After building an empire that stretched from Greece to India, he suddenly fell ill in Babylon. Ancient accounts describe him suffering from a high fever, severe abdominal pain, and a gradual paralysis. Strangely, they also note that his mind remained sharp until the very end. But what if Alexander didn't truly die when history claims he did? What if he was aware, paralyzed as his tomb was sealed forever? Many theories have been proposed to explain his death. Some suggest he was poisoned, possibly as part of a conspiracy among his generals. Others point to infectious diseases like malaria or West Nile fever contracted during his long military campaigns. But the most haunting theory? Modern researchers believe he may have suffered from Guillain-Barré syndrome, a rare autoimmune disorder that causes progressive paralysis. If true, Alexander may have been fully aware and unable to move as he was declared dead. What adds to the mystery is this: his body reportedly showed no signs of decomposition for 6 days. To the ancient Greeks, this was proof of his divinity, but for historians it raises even more questions. Was Alexander truly dead when he was buried, or was he entombed alive, helpless and paralyzed? The truth remains one of history's most chilling enigmas. When you think of gladiators, you probably picture men in armor fighting to the death in ancient Roman arenas. But did you know there were female gladiators too? Known as gladiatrices, these women took part in brutal combats against each other, and sometimes wild animals, all for the entertainment of roaring crowds. The first records of female gladiators appeared during the reign of Emperor Augustus, but it was under Nero and Domitian that their fights gained popularity. Domitian even hosted nighttime games illuminated by torches where women fought each other or dwarves in bizarre spectacles. Evidence suggests these women often fought bare-chested without helmets, making their battles even more shocking to the conservative Roman elite. One of the most fascinating discoveries is a relief from Halicarnassus showing two gladiatrices named Amazonia and Achillea locked in combat. The inscription declares the fight a draw, highlighting the skill and ferocity of these female warriors. However, their time in the spotlight was short-lived. In 200 CE, Emperor Septimius Severus banned women from the arena, deeming it inappropriate. Yet, their legacy lives on, a testament to the unexpected and often overlooked roles women played in ancient Rome's bloody games. In the early 19th century, the South China Sea was dominated by a formidable pirate leader, Qing Shi. Born around 1775, she began her career as a prostitute in Guangdong. In 1801, she married the notorious pirate Zheng Yi, and together they commanded a vast fleet known as the Red Flag Fleet. After Zheng Yi's death in 1807, Qing Shi took full control, leading over 300 junks and commanding between 20,000 and 40,000 pirates. Under her leadership, the fleet enforced a strict code of laws, ensuring discipline and loyalty among her ranks. Her influence was so extensive that she posed a significant threat to the Qing dynasty, as well as to British and Portuguese naval forces. Faced with her unstoppable fleet, even the mighty Chinese Empire had to admit defeat. Not in battle, but at the negotiation table. In 1810, recognizing her power, the Chinese government offered her amnesty, which she accepted. Qing Shi retired from piracy, opened a gambling house and lived peacefully until her death in 1844. Qing Shi's legacy endures as one of history's most successful and powerful pirates, commanding a fleet that rivaled many naval forces of her time. In 1692, the town of Salem, Massachusetts was gripped by fear. A group of young girls claimed they were possessed by the devil and began accusing local women of witchcraft. These accusations spiraled out of control, and soon the entire community was consumed by paranoia. Over 200 people were accused of practicing witchcraft, and 20 of them were executed after chaotic and deeply flawed trials. But what caused this hysteria? One theory points to ergot poisoning. Ergot is a toxic fungus that can grow on rye, a staple in Salem's diet. The conditions in 1691 were perfect for its spread warm, humid weather and damp grain stores. Consuming ergot can lead to symptoms like hallucinations, spasms, and irrational behavior, all of which mirrored the supposed possession described by the accusers. Now here's another surprising truth. Contrary to popular belief, no witches were burned at the stake in Salem. Instead, the accused were either hanged or, in one case, crushed to death. Burning was a punishment more common in Europe, but in Puritan America, hanging was the standard method of execution for those convicted of witchcraft. George Washington, the first president of the United States, is often remembered as a war hero and a founding father, but did you know he was also a whiskey mogul? After his presidency, Washington turned his focus to his estate at Mount Vernon, where he built what would become the largest whiskey distillery in America at the time. By 1799, the distillery was producing over 11,000 gallons of unaged whiskey annually, making Washington one of the most successful distillers in the country. His whiskey was so popular that it became a staple for merchants along the East Coast. The operation employed enslaved workers and skilled overseers, highlighting the complexities of Washington's legacy. Interestingly, the distillery was lost to history after his death but was reconstructed in the 21st century. Today, visitors can see a working replica of the distillery and even taste whiskey made using 18th century techniques. George Washington may have been a president, but he was also a businessman who knew how to capitalize on America's growing thirst for whiskey. On a sweltering 4th of July in 1850, Zachary Taylor, the 12th President of the United States, attended a celebration filled with food, speeches, and festivities. To cool off, Taylor reportedly consumed copious amounts of cherries and iced milk. But what seemed like an innocent indulgence quickly turned deadly. The next day, Taylor fell gravely ill with severe stomach pain, vomiting, and diarrhea. Doctors of the time attributed his condition to gastroenteritis, likely caused by the acidic combination of cherries and milk. Within 5 days, the president was dead. His sudden and mysterious death led to rampant speculation. Was it food poisoning, or could Taylor have been assassinated, poisoned by political enemies? Decades later, in 1991, his body was exhumed for testing. The results? No trace of arsenic or other poisons was found, leaving the original diagnosis of acute gastroenteritis as the most likely cause. Zachary Taylor's death remains one of the most bizarre chapters in presidential history, proving that even cherries and milk can be deadly under the wrong circumstances. Andrew Jackson, the 7th President of the United States, was known for his fiery temper and unorthodox behavior, but even more infamous than the man himself was his pet parrot, Polly. This African gray parrot wasn't just a companion, it was a master of profanity. Jackson reportedly taught Polly an extensive repertoire of curse words, delighting guests with the bird's colorful vocabulary. However, Polly's antics didn't stop with Jackson's presidency. When Jackson passed away in 1845, Polly attended his funeral. But as solemn prayers and eulogies were delivered, the parrot began squawking obscenities so loudly that it disrupted the service. According to witnesses, Polly's outburst became so disruptive that the bird had to be removed from the ceremony entirely. This bizarre moment cemented Polly's place in history as one of the most unconventional presidential pets of all time. Andrew Jackson's legacy might be controversial, but Polly the parrot left her own unique mark, proving that even a bird can inherit its owner's fiery personality. In 1386, the town of Falaise in France became the stage for one of the most bizarre trials in history. The accused, a sow. The crime, attacking and killing a newborn child on Christmas Day. In the medieval mindset, animals were seen as moral beings, capable of distinguishing right from wrong and therefore held accountable for their actions. The sow was arrested, imprisoned, and brought to court, where a formal trial lasting 9 days took place. To mirror human justice, the animal was even assigned a court-appointed lawyer. Witnesses testified, evidence was presented, and the sow was ultimately found guilty of murder. The grotesque didn't end there. Before her execution, the sow was dressed in human clothing, disfigured to mimic the child's injuries, and paraded through the streets of Falaise. The punishment? Death by hanging, followed by burning. Local peasants were even instructed to bring their pigs to witness the event. A gruesome lesson to deter misbehavior among animals. This strange event remains one of the best documented animal trials in history, illustrating the deeply symbolic and moralistic worldview of the Middle Ages. The Great Depression of the 1930s was a time of extreme hardship in the United States, and for many families even basic necessities became luxuries. This gave rise to one of the most resourceful and unexpected trends in fashion history: clothing made from food sacks. During this period, flour, potato, and feed sacks were made from durable fabric, often plain and utilitarian. However, as struggling families began repurposing these sacks into dresses, shirts, and even underwear, manufacturers took notice. To meet demand, companies started printing sacks with colorful patterns, floral designs, and even sewing instructions. These garments were a testament to the ingenuity of families trying to make ends meet, transforming something as mundane as a food sack into essential clothing during one of history's darkest economic periods. On August 27, 1896, the British Empire and the Sultanate of Zanzibar went to war. But unlike most conflicts, this one didn't drag on for years, or even days. It lasted a mere 38 minutes, earning its place in history as the shortest war ever recorded. The conflict began when the pro-British Sultan of Zanzibar died, and his successor, Khalid bin Bargash, took the throne without British approval. Determined to enforce their influence, the British issued an ultimatum demanding Khalid step down. When he refused, British forces opened fire on the Sultan's palace and key strategic points. Outgunned and overwhelmed, the Sultan's forces surrendered after less than an hour. Khalid fled to the German consulate, and a pro-British leader was installed in his place. This lightning-fast war was a stark display of British military dominance during the colonial era, showing that even rebellions could be crushed in the blink of an eye. In ancient Rome, a surprising household staple wasn't soap or bleach, it was urine. Yes, urine. This unlikely cleaning agent became a vital tool for Roman households and industries alike thanks to its high ammonia content, which acts as a natural detergent. Urine was commonly used in laundries to clean and whiten clothes. Workers would collect it in large vats, then stomp on the fabrics with their feet to ensure the liquid soaked through. It was also a popular choice for polishing bronze and whitening teeth, though the latter might make your stomach turn today. The demand for urine was so high that Emperor Vespasian imposed a tax on its collection and sale, aptly named the urine tax. When criticized for taxing something so unappealing, Vespasian famously held up a coin and said, "Money doesn't stink." This peculiar practice reveals just how resourceful and practical the ancient Romans could be, even with the most unexpected of materials. Genghis Khan, the legendary conqueror who built one of history's largest empires, is a figure shrouded in mystery, especially when it comes to his final resting place. While his death in 1227 is well documented, the location of his tomb has remained one of history's greatest unsolved enigmas. For centuries, rumors of his burial site persisted, but during the Soviet era, the mystery deepened. The USSR, intent on erasing Genghis Khan's legacy to suppress Mongolian nationalism, outlawed any mention of his name, banned pilgrimages to his birthplace, and removed his story from textbooks. His presumed burial site near Burkhan Khaldun Mountain in Mongolia became strictly off-limits, sealed off from both locals and researchers. To this day, no physical evidence of Genghis Khan's tomb has been discovered, and efforts to locate it are hampered by both local traditions and modern politics. The mystery remains unsolved, leaving historians and archaeologists to wonder, where does the great Khan truly rest? In ancient Japan, a select group of Buddhist monks sought enlightenment through one of the most extreme and grueling practices imaginable: self-mummification. Known as sokushinbutsu, this process required incredible physical and mental discipline, pushing the human body to its absolute limits. The monks would begin by drastically altering their diet, consuming only nuts, seeds, and roots to strip their bodies of fat. Over the course of 1,000 days, they would further restrict their intake to bark and tea made from toxic tree sap, which acted as a preservative and deterred bacteria from breaking down their bodies after death. Finally, they would entomb themselves alive in a small chamber, sitting in meditation as they slowly starved. This practice was believed to lead to true enlightenment, transforming the monk into an eternal vessel of spiritual power. Only a handful of monks successfully achieved sokushinbutsu, and their preserved bodies are still revered in Japanese temples today as symbols of ultimate devotion and sacrifice. Though officially outlawed in the 19th century, this haunting tradition continues to intrigue and inspire those seeking to understand the extremes of human faith and determination. On August 6, 1945, Tsutomu Yamaguchi was on a business trip in Hiroshima when the unthinkable happened. The first atomic bomb detonated less than 2 miles from where he stood, leveling the city. Miraculously, Yamaguchi survived, though he suffered severe burns and temporary blindness. Determined to return home, he boarded a train the next day and arrived in his hometown of Nagasaki, unaware that it would soon face the same fate. On August 9th, as he was recounting his Hiroshima experience to his co-workers, the second atomic bomb exploded. Once again, Yamaguchi survived, though the devastation around him was unimaginable. Despite his injuries, Yamaguchi continued his life in Nagasaki, becoming the only man officially recognized as having survived both atomic bombings. During World War I, Paris faced relentless aerial bombings from German forces. To protect the city, French engineers devised a bold and unusual strategy. They built a fake Paris. Located just outside the real city, this elaborate decoy included replicas of key landmarks like the Champs-Élysées, the Gare du Nord, and even illuminated streets to mimic the glow of nighttime Paris. Strategically placed lights and fake factories created the illusion of industrial activity, designed to mislead German pilots and draw attacks away from the real capital. The effort was incredibly detailed, with painted scenery and buildings crafted to be convincing from the air. While the fake city was never used in full combat conditions, it remains a testament to the ingenuity and desperation of wartime defense strategies. On April 26, 1986, Vladimir Pravik, a young firefighter, was among the first responders to the catastrophic explosion at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. As chaos unfolded, Pravik and his team rushed to the scene, unaware of the invisible danger surrounding them, extreme levels of radiation. Within hours, Pravik began to exhibit symptoms of acute radiation sickness, including severe burns and swelling. One eerie detail emerged. Witnesses claimed that the intense radiation exposure caused Pravik's brown eyes to turn blue. This bizarre and haunting phenomenon was a stark sign of the deadly doses he had received. Pravik succumbed to radiation poisoning just 15 days later, becoming one of the first casualties of the disaster. His bravery, alongside that of his team, prevented an even greater catastrophe, but it came at an unimaginable cost. St. Lawrence, one of the most revered Christian martyrs, met his gruesome fate in 258 CE under the Roman Emperor Valerian's persecution of Christians. As a deacon, Lawrence was responsible for distributing alms to the poor and managing church treasures. When ordered to surrender the church's wealth to the Roman authorities, Lawrence defiantly gathered the poor and proclaimed, "These are the true treasures of the church." Furious at his audacity, the Romans sentenced him to death by being roasted alive on a gridiron. According to legend, Lawrence maintained his wit even in the face of unimaginable pain. At one point during his execution, he reportedly called out to his torturers, "Turn me over, I'm done on this side." This darkly ironic remark turned St. Lawrence into a symbol of unwavering faith and humor in the face of suffering. His martyrdom became so iconic that he was later named the patron saint of cooks, chefs, and comedians, a legacy as unusual as his final words. In ancient Rome, military triumphs were grand celebrations, where victorious generals paraded through the city streets with their spoils of war. But amidst the pomp and glory there was an unexpected tradition: soldiers singing crude and insulting songs about their commanders. These lewd chants, often filled with jokes and personal jabs, were meant to entertain the crowds lining the streets. Even Julius Caesar wasn't spared. His troops famously mocked him during his triumph, joking about his rumored relationships with men. Far from being offended, commanders often tolerated or even encouraged these songs as a way to boost morale and camaraderie among the ranks. The tradition highlights the unique culture of Roman legions, where discipline and respect coexisted with moments of irreverence. For the soldiers, it was a rare chance to poke fun at their superiors without fear of reprisal. And for the public, it added a touch of humor to an otherwise solemn display of power. In May 1945, as the Soviet Union celebrated its victory over Nazi Germany, the streets of cities across Russia erupted into days of jubilant partying. Vodka, the national drink, flowed freely, as millions toasted the end of World War II. But the celebration soon hit an unexpected snag. After just 22 hours, the country ran out of vodka. The shortage was unprecedented and highlighted the scale of the celebrations. Factories and distilleries had been redirected toward wartime production, leaving limited reserves of alcohol. The government scrambled to replenish supplies, but for a brief moment the Soviet Union, a country synonymous with vodka, was completely dry. This unusual episode captured the immense relief and euphoria of a nation that had endured staggering losses during the war. It remains a unique footnote in history, illustrating how even the most abundant resources can be drained in extraordinary times. In the late 19th century, a South African railway employed one of the most unlikely workers in history, a baboon named Jack. He wasn't just a mascot. Jack was an actual assistant to James Wide, a railway signalman who had lost his legs in an accident. Wide trained Jack to operate the railway's complex signaling system. Under his guidance, Jack learned how to switch tracks, operate levers, and even deliver keys to train conductors. Remarkably, Jack performed these tasks flawlessly for 9 years. The railway was initially skeptical of employing an animal, but after extensive testing they were so impressed with Jack's precision that they officially hired him. Jack was paid 20 cents a day and given half a bottle of beer as a reward for his hard work. When Jack died in 1890, his contributions were so valued that his skull was preserved and displayed in a museum. His story remains one of the most extraordinary examples of animal intelligence and human-animal partnerships in history. History is filled with stories that are stranger than fiction, from heroic baboons to entire nations running out of vodka. These moments remind us that the past is as unpredictable and fascinating as the present. Which of these facts surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories from history.